Planning and organization, not surprisingly, the clients who, kind of answers one of your questions, the clients who enjoyed kind of being micromanaged and structured were the most successful with the coaching model. The clients with higher anxiety and felt like when their day was being so micromanaged, it, made them a little bit weirded out and crazy, didn't like the coaching as much. The methods for learning. This was interesting too. As you know, we all learn differently, kinesthetically, auditorily, visually. And the client suggested that rather than just using those worksheets and pencil and paper, if we could somehow come up with some different pieces of different tools to use, that it might help. And it would not only help with the different types of learners, but we also know that people with ADHD like things when they're novel and new and exciting. And I would notice that after a few weeks, even those clients who were writing furiously in weeks 1 and 2, it kind of started to die down, and there'd be spaces, and they admitted to not pulling out the handbook as often. So they said, well, if you kind of switched it up and had a different tool in week 3, that maybe the process, it might not become as boring and repetitive. And then standardization refers a little bit back to the coach's input, in that some of the clients felt like they wanted goal areas offered that were typically areas of difficulty for people with ADHD. So relationship goal. Set a relationship goal, set a academic or work goal, set a health goal, set this goal. They said, if you gave me categories and I had to set a goal within each one of those, that might be helpful to me.
So I didn't quite get that. Could you just repeat that? So standardization is about?
They wanted a standard, particular topics that typically are difficult for an individual with ADHD. So rather than them choose, I want a health goal and an academic goal, they wanted suggestions, say 5 areas. These are the 5 areas that people with ADHD typically struggle with. Let's set a goal for yourself in each one of these areas. More structure. Yep.
Can I go back, just as I was writing this up for myself, the variety of teaching tools. If you keep supplying them and mixing them up, then they're not taking the onus on themselves to actually use them which is the goal, is it not, of coaching? Is that they start
No, that's a good point.
These tools,
Yep.
and they're all, okay.
Yeah, and these were all suggestions from the clients, so that would be an excellent point. So maybe we could suggest that, yes, we have different tools, but maybe we brainstorm them together and you come up with some ideas and it's not all falling on the coach.
In a follow-up, what was in the study, could you extrapolate any distinctions between those just asking more literal, even what should the goal be, and those that came up with the goals themselves? Any distinction or extrapolation on who was more successful in those models of those two groups?
In the study, it was designed that the client was supposed to be the one coming up with the goal. So all of these clients, well, the coach would have input and help and insight to help them formulate that goal and word it in a way that was measurable. It was supposed to come all from the client. And some of the clients essentially were saying that I'd like a little more input from the coach because you're the expert.
Did you measure the clients that gave you that feedback against the ones that didn't ask for more?
No.
I have a question about that idea of wanting more coach feedback. I think that's common in the coaching relationship, that people are more comfortable like with a consulting type relationship. They expect, especially somebody they regard as an authority figure, to tell them what to do. So I'm saying that's a kind of a conflict
And that
exists
anyway,
too, right? Oh, okay. Well, that's a common comment from people that are in these relationships.
Right. And of course, a good follow-up to all of these things would be, let's try some of them and see what happens and what works and what doesn't. But again, the design of a case study is to develop these questions and then take them further. Okay, so participant characteristics, here we are. Age and grade level. So you remember that theory that I was talking about, that the college student goes off to school and they struggle right away and they fail? Okay. So interestingly here, all of these students, and these people volunteered for this study, all of these students were, other than Jamie in high school, were either college seniors or beyond. And they were all age 24 and older. So these weren't students that went to school and started to fail. And a lot of them actually said that they didn't really struggle their first couple of years of college, that they actually found ways to get by. And that raises a lot of questions. Were they slick? Did they talk their way out of a lot of things? Are universities being a little more lenient on the younger students than they used to be? Are parents parenting their children a little longer than they used to be? We don't know. So it was interesting, but what some of them said was, as they matured and got older, they started to take ownership and they started to really care about doing well. And that they didn't care so much when they were younger. And now they weren't just trying to get through school, they were actually trying to get something out of it. So that was the feedback that a lot of them had. Age of diagnosis, something interesting too. All the clients in the study, with the exception of Jamie again, were diagnosed as older adolescents or adults. And their comments about that were that maybe if I was diagnosed younger, I would have understood what was going on and I wouldn't have struggled as much because I could have gotten help. But as an older person, I always had these difficulties. I didn't really get it. I didn't know what to attribute it to. And so I really, really struggled. And now I'm paying for that. My self-esteem is down, and it's more difficult. So that was interesting too, that these people weren't diagnosed as children. Emotional status, again, as I mentioned earlier, as we were talking about, that all of these individuals reported some level of anxiety, depression, or low self-esteem. So it's there, it's often comorbid. So the question is it completely realistic to eliminate the emotive and the insight process from the coaching process? And then where is that line? Interpersonal relationships, actually, I already touched on as well, that these people were in troubled relationships as reported by themselves, but didn't really set a goal of that. So maybe that's something that we should think about more. And then accommodations in schools. None of these clients actually knew about 504s and IEPs and the American Disabilities Act and the fact that they could get accommodations. So we need to step it up there too and really help these students. And maybe the coach needs to talk about that in session and find out what they're aware of, and if not, help them find an advocate or a consultant so that they can get those. Some of the limitations of case study in general, and especially this one, is extraneous variables. Things like what's going on outside of the coaching session. These clients were coming once a week, and I had no control of what was going on in their lives outside of that. A good example here is this the study occurred when the shootings at Virginia Tech occurred, if you all remember that. And going back to Aziz, who's diagnosed bipolar, the student in that case was also diagnosed bipolar. And he really struggled with that because he felt like he had a lot of difficulties throughout his life with that. And so with this going on, it kind of it increased some of his anxiety around that and probably impact his ability to meet his goals.